Good afternoon, everybody. Thanks for joining us today. Hope your summit experience is going well and you're learning a lot. I'm so excited to introduce the Aldine team to share about their really exciting work around launching their school choice application for school options in that district. I'm going to pass it over to Adrian and Colin and to lead us in this session. So feel free to take it away.
Great. Thank you, Chris. And thank you all for joining us today. My name is Adrian Bustillos, the Chief Transformation Officer in Aldine ISD. And today we're going to talk about staying connected and launching the Aldine ISD Choice Schools application. Before we get started here, I just want to give an overview of what we'll be talking about. You'll see our agenda for today. We'll talk about welcome and introductions. I'm going to give Colin a few minutes here to talk about himself. We'll talk about our Aldine context of what we got to, how we got here, and where we're moving towards. I'll give you a little in-depth overview of our timeline of events and how we got to using our unified enrollment system, and talk about our Aldine's process and walk you through what our school finder looks like, and a walkthrough of our application that parents and students have the opportunity to use this year. And then at the end, we'll have some time for any questions from the audience from the chat, and we can take them at that point and just kind of go through there. So if you have any questions throughout, please use the chat feature. Some of our members from our team will share some documents through the chat as well. So anytime you have any questions, please feel free to jump in there. So I'm going to go ahead and move us along here. Again, my name is Adrian Bustillos. I'm the Chief Transformation Officer for Aldine. I arrived in Aldine in October of 2019, 6 months before the pandemic hit. So we're making some great strides here in Aldine and moving this work forward, our transformative work. And with that, we've been assigned and part of Systems of Great Schools now going for 2 years. And during that time, we've been matched with Kitamba, our technical assistance provider. So I'm going to go ahead and turn it over to Colin Moore.
Hi, good afternoon, everyone. Thanks for the introduction, Adrian. I'm Colin Moore. I work for Kitamba. We are an education consulting group, done work across the country for the past 7 years, started in the Northeast, and sort of expanded our reach and expanded our service to clients across the country. Specifically, we've been working in Texas for the last 4 years. We've been executive advisors to school districts in the SGS since the beginning of the network, and as Drew mentioned, have been EAs for Aldine since they got started in the program. We also have some deep, extensive experience in the planning and implementation of unified enrollment systems like this one. Helped launch and develop the systems in Camden, New Jersey and Newark, New Jersey back several years ago. And then most recently with a peer in the System of Great Schools network, Midland Independent School District. And so I'm happy to field any questions generally about how these systems work, what goes into planning and putting them together, with the caveat that they're all highly locally driven contextual decisions, which I'm sure Adrian will share a little bit more about, but happy to provide kind of a broad overview. So I think direct your questions to Adrian first on the Aldine specifics, but if you have any broader questions about some of these systems, I'm happy to dive in. And I think one other thing I want to emphasize, Adrian, Dr. Goffney, the superintendent at Aldine, and Aldine's entire cabinet have done an excellent, commendable and laudatory job of connecting the SGS work to their district's overall strategic plan. And I think you'll see this embodied in a lot of the work that Adrian's going to highlight here, with the creation and expansion of great options for students in Aldine. Running alongside that has been a really deliberate effort from Adrian and from Dr. Goffney, who emphasizes that every kid in the district needs a shot at a good school, to ensure that the students have access to those options, a fair shake, and in some senses prioritizing higher need students to get into higher performing schools to address some of the systemic inequities that plague all of our school districts and are especially prevalent in Aldine. And so that linkage of creation of great options and ensuring access to and equity of access to those options is something that I think Aldine's done particularly well. I know Adrian's going to continue to highlight it, but I just wanted to compliment them a little bit there on what I think has been a great job. So I'll kick it back to you, Adrian.
Great, Colin, thank you for that. So let's move forward here and we'll talk about some of the work we're doing about expanding grad options and how we put that all together here. So we're going to talk about our Aldine context. I want to let you know here, again, I mentioned Aldine launched a new 5-year strategic plan in the summer of 2019. This work here is rooted in the Systems of Grade School framework with the vision of ensuring all Aldine students receive a dynamic and unparalleled education that ensures choices and opportunities for today and the future. So we're anchoring our work in 5 places here: student achievement, school culture, mission-driven leadership, organization efficiency, community engagement, and outreach to create these choices and opportunities. So as we move forward in the process, and we think each time is, how do we have this equitable access to choice schools in our district and ensure that it's a key that all students have this choice and opportunities? So how do we become more efficient? How do we give access to families? And how do we have a tool that allows any student to have the same opportunity to get into a highly rated school or our new choice programs moving forward? So as the district looks to strategically expand choices and opportunities to meet the needs of our community, we have to do an annual portfolio process. The school choice application and the school finder, they're going to be key to ensure that our equitable access for all students can be used as a tool to communicate choices to our family. If you were with us in December, we'd had an opportunity to talk about our school portfolio process and how do we get to which schools we're going to open, what areas are we going to open them, what schools are we going to assist with. So that's a whole system here. You heard that today throughout the day from the opening with Chris and Mega, with the commissioner as well for Tulsa Public Schools, and some of the sessions you've heard today. You know, we've talked about, you've heard about expanding grade options. You've heard about creating new organization structures. You've heard about the managed school performance work as well to help drive some of this planning. But now we're going to talk about improving access to options and what that looks like. And as Chris also mentioned, as Colin mentioned earlier, we are doing some great things here in Aldine. As we have our magnet school choices, we've merged them all to the Office of Transformation to use the school choice finder as we expand our options of creating our new schools in our district. Magnet choices, those are choice options. So as we do this, how do we rebrand them? How do we talk about them? And how do we fold them into our whole portfolio of a system of creating choices and opportunities for our families? As we build out our P-TECH models at our campuses and expand those options, how do we use that and use it in a unified enrollment system as well? We talk about our school action fund. In Aldine this year, we are going to restart 2 campuses. We are going to work with 2 redesigned campuses with 2 of them. And we're also going to launch 2 new schools, a Young Women's Leadership Academy and a La Promesa, a newcomer and dual language experience for our students in high school as well. So we're also going to expand our additional day school year option at 2 campuses for a 210-year calendar. So all of this are new choices and opportunities for our families. And as we do this, we want to ensure that there is an equitable process and a tool that families can streamline this process so they're not filling out one document in one place, going to another place to fill out another form, and paper moving from one hand to another. So how can we streamline this process for our families? How do we make it grow and moving forward? So with that, we anchor ourselves here and we have to drive our work forward. So as we solve and talk about how do we increase our highly rated choices, I just mentioned some of the redesign and restart work we're doing our additional day school year. With that also, we're doing math innovation and working with opportunity cultures. If you were in the last session, I just heard from Ector County about the great work they're doing. We were in the session at 1:30 about choices and families. How do we make it easier for families to have these practices and enrollments? Like, what do we need to do to change our system to create something easy and effective for families, but give that access throughout the district? We don't want to hear it's like, oh, you have to know someone to get into this program. Or if you talk to this individual, they're surely you'll get you in here. So how do we have these processes and safeguards that any student in our district can apply and have an equitable chance of enrollment throughout this side of the house? So as we look to create the school finder and our choice application, we knew we had many applications out there, different formats, different sizes, different pieces to it. So how can we do it as one? So we want to ensure that we can streamline the vision of the choice schools, and these online application for unified enrollment is to create this application, navigate a tool for systems with prompts. Families can use tabs and drop-down menus to easily identify programs. Use a system to be efficient to make it possible for parents to apply to not just one program, but multiple programs, and be able to rank their choices 1, 2, and 3, and use a system to optimize a communication. Rather than sending out paper letters every year or every 3 weeks, getting the return mail back and forth, we want to have a system that can utilize a standard email and text notifications to improve communication, accept chairs, decline chairs, move systems effectively. So this is going to help with our timely communication for parents on here. So this is what we're trying to solve for and using this online enrollment system. As we looked at our district and said, okay, where are our choices? We do have a magnet choice option that's been in Aldine for the last 20 plus years. We have a Montessori program, IB strand from elementary to high school. We have STEM programs, fine arts, visual arts. We've launched a P-Tech and Avalos P-Tech school. We have our early colleges. We have our CTE schools. So we have some choices. But as we start to expand our choices throughout the entire 111 square miles of Aldine, 82 buildings, we need to ensure that this map shows that we have a pocket of choice applications. Well, now we need to get this choice and opportunity throughout the entire district. As we serve a high population, 89% of economic disadvantaged students, 75% at-risk students, we know we need to have some options throughout the district and not in just one place of our community. So as we work to grow this option, we're going to open, as I mentioned, a Young Women's Leadership Academy coming this fall, grades 6 and 7. And we're going to also open a La Promesa, our newcomer school. It's going to be a newcomer and dual language experience starting with grade 9. And we're going to add a grade each year till we build it out 9 through 12. And same for the Young Women's Leadership Academy. We'll start at grade 6 and 7 and add a grade each year. But with that, what's next? What other choices? What's the community asking for? What is that work looking for to serve? So as we can continue to grow our programs or rebrand or re-exist, how can we hear that? I've heard throughout the day in sessions, how do we keep marketing our programs? How do we keep getting the word out? How do we simplify the process for our families? So using this third lever of the systems of great schools, improving access to options, we want to ensure that we can do this. Some of the things we're going to look at to solve our option here is we're going to look at ensuring that this success can be measured by the number of applications we have. Can we increase those applications? The feedback we get from parents from our communication web-based surveys, also increase our seats, the number of seats at our choice campuses, and also create this one-stop shop for families to keep moving in the process. So that's our context of where we're at right now on our Aldine schools, our choice programs, and moving forward. So our new portfolio system is going to be school of choice for Aldine and one unified enrollment system to help this process go through. So this was our first year in the process, and we're going to talk a little bit about that timeline and what it looked like. So as we look at this timeline overview, you really need to give yourself at least 12 to 18 month runway to build this out. This conversation actually started in the spring of 2020, the school magnet programs asking, what can we do? How do we simplify the process? We had a school choice application, we had a magnet application, and then within our magnet application, we had variations of applications throughout. And families wanted to go to different programs, so they had to fill out multiple applications. So as we spoke with the magnet team, we got feedback from the community. We've heard from the magnet coordinators, from the principals, how do we simplify this? How do we make it easier from it? Because if you go down the street, they'll enroll you in 5, 10, 15 minutes, and we lost our students. So we want to ensure, what does that look like? So the conversation needs to start far out, 12 to 18 months. One thing that helped accelerate our work on this program is that we do have a local group. We work with Good Reason Houston, who helped fund the program to get us up and running, to help the pilot with that work. So we were grateful for that opportunity to pair up with our local philanthropy group to help fund the work, to get us going on here. So as we vetted the system, Aldine came out with a Schoolman. This was going to be our provider to help us get the work up and rolling and start that engagement. So in January, we had to ensure we did our processes. We met with the principals, we met with the magnet coordinators, we met with families. We had a great video instructions for the application. We had to meet with each school individually to determine what is their school needs are, what do they highlight, what is their non-negotiables, what can we put as one unified system. In that process, we also had to do some test applications in January. We weren't just going to launch a system on day one and say, okay, our application's open, let's hope it works. So we had to do some tests here. We did 3 to 5 campuses. We did test applications at each campus to ensure families can access, go through the process, submit, and then check on the backside that everything was there. We had opportunities to email questions and comments, concerns, find our systems and guidelines for glitches, even misspellings that you may overlook as we're creating applications. Those are big. These are public facing documents that we're putting out to the community. we want to ensure that we have everything correct. As we went through there, we had to request one-on-one conferences with our technical assistance provider and our vendor to ensure they're meeting the needs of each and every school. Because when we talk about the school finder, each school would have an opportunity to create and upload the documents and put the information that sets them apart, as families have that option to go look and see and learn from what other options are in our district. So that happened in January. Our goal to get this out was in February, the middle of February, February 15th. As you know, we had the big freeze in February, so we pushed it back a week or so. So that kind of pushed our timeline out. We had a goal for March to have our deadline for applications March 26th, and you guys might think, oh, that's pretty late. You know what? It is late. With this year, we had moved to a new online system away from paper. This kind of matched up the time when the applications for paper were coming in. But the great thing about a unified online system is that we can open this application September 1 when school starts. We can start recruiting September, October, November, December. Goal, run our first lottery in December, and we'll talk about that a little bit later. That way we're aligning to new schools surrounding our district or new schools that are opening in our boundaries. We can compete with their timelines, and our schools and parents don't have to wait for our choice options to do applications or inform them. This actually accelerates our timeline of events for new school options and new schools for families as they choose that process. So that was our March piece of it. As we went through April, we did our lottery. One thing this system actually helped us do is that as we look at our budget items, we did contract out services with various vendors to run the lottery process for us. This one tool that we're using is a one-stop shop. The district controls the lottery piece to it. We set our timelines, we put our conditions. One thing we'll highlight is that, you know, in your lottery process, you have to put your manual of what your rates are. Does anyone get bonus points? Are they economic disadvantage? You give them two seats to the lottery. So there's pieces to the puzzle that you can outline whatever your community is asking for, what your needs are for that school. That's a great part of it. So a cost savings is that we don't no longer have to contract services out to run the lottery because that's built in, and we can run it as many times as we need. We can clean it up as that process goes on. So that was a big piece to it. Another great option here in our timeline was in April, we were able to, once we ran our lottery, students and families were notified instantly. We gave them 14 days to accept or decline their seats, and there was movement on there. So the process irons itself out. We monitored to ensure that families were accepting or declining. If we had parents not have any movement, we'd give some personalized calls to the parents to let them know, did they see it, did they get their notification, and go online to make their decision. So no papers back and forth. And so by May, we were able to run all our lotteries, have our schools, have their students identified, get all the paperwork, get their assignments out, and everyone knows, okay, now I know where I'm going. So this was a spring piece of it. Now that we have this model, it's built out, moving forward next year, all we have to do is a little bit of cleanup and clean up the items that we need to do in this process. One of the great things up here is that we were able to put the application online. We were able to do it in our four most spoken languages. In Aldine, we had English, Spanish, Vietnamese, and French. So families have those options to go through that process on here. So that's kind of our timeline. So if you're looking to do this work, if you can really do it from the spring through June, you'll have a good runway to run and test the pilot so that you can open it in September of the next year to lead for your following year process. So 12 to 18 months is ideal to build out the system. So moving here on Aldine's process and our initial engagement and runway, we'll talk about this. So as I just talked about here is how do we identify those people and key stakeholders? One thing is you have to have your student services or your PEAMS person who does the next school service on there. You know, what information do you need to do? So we did learn some lessons as we did the first year here is one, give ourselves a longer runway. We did this in about 8 months, as you heard me say, 12 to 18 months, this is probably ideal. Who is a team of your district that's gonna help support that work? Talking about your school assistant superintendents, school principals, magnet coordinators. If you have a school choice portfolio person, who does that look like? Your student services to help navigate what data do you need to pull from the online unified system to your PEAM system. One great thing about this tool is that you'll be able to identify, if you like, a number of students of where they're applying from. What is their backgrounds? What are their conditions? So whatever you feel is important as your district to gather that data, you want to ensure that the vendor will be able to pull that data in your system so you can easily run reports, run charts, to get what you need on here. So student services is a key part of it. This cannot be done in isolation. You do need to have a district team to oversee that process. So whoever is running that at your campus is key to move the work forward. And as I mentioned, because the magnet is a choice option, we just took that as part of the transformation office to move towards a school choice portfolio side of the house and one application for all our services on the application for families. And this allowed us to look at what common themes emerged from all the campuses, what we needed to do to move the work forward. Name, date of birth, address, those are pretty much common informations. Some schools had some requirements that were required. So as the vendor worked with each school individually, if I selected a specific school, then I'd have more prompts that come out to fill out for that individual campus. So that does take some time to do. That takes probably about 3 to 4 weeks. Then you need to give the developer some time to build it out. That may be another 6 to 10 weeks. So you want to ensure you can go through there cleanly, review it, and have that application ready. One thing you don't want to do is start live and say, okay, we got to take it back down and push it back up. That's not a good practice here. So we want to ensure we have that work right. But once you have it up and running, the next thing is just slight cleanups for the next year. So you can keep your application open at all times, run the lotteries as you set fit, as long as you let the community know these are your days. And then the summertime, what we're doing right now is we're cleaning up that work going forward. So one thing we would like to do for next year is we want to ensure that the families have that opportunity to do less keystrokes. So there is a way to say, hey, vendor, we'd like to share our data. Once a student puts their ID number, everything's auto-populated. The name, the guardian, the next school, the next grade level, which is key, because I may be applying for a program that's going from 5th to 6th grade, and I put 7th grade, so I don't see that option. So some of those data entry errors that we have will clean up and accelerate the work. We're able just to get a clean file. And that's where that student service person comes in is key. They can let you know this is what we need to help move the systems and talk. And it's less keystrokes for families, which makes it easier to complete the application and less time as well. So we want to ensure that keeps moving forward on our process. And as we worked on here, we wanted to ensure that clear scope of work for our pilot schools. We did this for all our schools that are our school of choice. We have about 18 programs here in Aldine that we'll be rolling out. Developing the school of choice finder. That was one of the probably hardest things I would say I have to do is, we asked the principals, we asked the magnet coordinators in the schools, okay, what's your program? What sets it apart? Can we be specific? How detailed do you want to get on that to say, this is why my magnet program or school choice program stands out from the others? And then how does that look like in our process? One thing was a great success and we had great feedback is that this tool is also a mobile app. We all have our phones with us at all times. It's easy for a family just to get on the phone, start doing their application. So it was very clean. It was easy to go through that process to just fill out the application. We were very fortunate in Aldine to go to one-to-one devices. So all our families have devices at home. We gave options for connectivity as well. So students have the opportunity to fill out the application with parents. So this mobile app, we had great feedback on it. We had a lot of families fill out their application on their mobile devices. So that also showed us an indication that it worked. And we had over 6,000 applications during the pandemic. So it was a great win for us on that side of the house of it. So once we're able to tie the application and school system up, it's going to be a lot cleaner for our families. We had a lot to do a manual cleanup this year, but that's okay. That was one lesson learned. And now we know exactly what we need to get from our student service side of the house, and getting that information for less keystrokes is going to be key for Aldine and our families to simplify that process and move it along here. So I'm going to give you guys a demonstration right now about our school finder and our school choice application and what that looks like, some screenshots and kind of through that process on here. So really this piece of working with our vendor, with Schoolman, they were able to answer our questions, create a guide for us. So anytime we needed to run reports on the back end, where you can clearly see how many students applied at each specific school, where they're coming from, students who are eligible, and then we can see the lottery runs and who accepted and real-time data. So right away, we can see who's accepted, who declined, and student wait lists move up and down. So that was a great win for us as well, rather than waiting for a parent to email us a paper back or send us a signed paper to the magnet coordinator, who then has to go to a Google spreadsheet and then has to do that type. So less keystrokes for everybody means less errors. And as we worked on our community engagement and rollout, we did hold a choice fair in December, a virtual choice fair. One thing we're working on our school choice program is that we need to have an event at least every month. Whether it's a virtual event now that we have that tool to do it, very successful. We were able to do stream it on YouTube, record them online as well. So when families wanted to come back, they can see them. They had individual breakout sessions for all our schools. We had it was a 3-hour session. We had the link to a letter of interest. So once our application was ready, we emailed parents directly to say, hey, you said you were interested in our La Promesa school. Here it is. You're interested in our Blanson CTE school. Here's a link to the application. So we once got a letter of interest during this choice fair. But now that our application will be ready to go in September, we just have to say, here's the application. Feel free to apply starting in September rather than January or February in the spring. So we're going to accelerate that application process by 3 or 4 months. So start winning our students to keep them in our district, in our schools, in our programs. So that was a great way to do this. One thing we talked about as we move back to face-to-face, how do we get these fairs, not just in our community buildings, but out in the community? We've done a great job this year working with our 2 new schools, promoting them, not just on our social media sites, but also putting them out on our buying ads, Facebook, Instagram, all of those online media tools to run ads for our all-girls school, our La Promesa school, our Hall Success Academy to promote these actions, but also where to go to apply on our unified enrollment system. And they can talk about and then see all our choice offerings in Aldine. So we've seen an uptick on that side of the house. We were able to get a lot of some local news attention on our newcomer school, La Promesa, Telemundo, and Univision, as they ran ads for us and showed the new school choice options in Aldine. Our phones have been ringing off the hook. And the great thing about it is anybody in our team who talks about the work, they know the site, enroll.aldineisd.org. That'll be here in the chat here, and you all will see, you can clearly go to the school finders, find the application and sign up. So it's a click and point for our families to do here. So this really helped us move our families and guide them through the application one to learn about the community and our programs and hold these events. So as we go forward, we're going to start making these videos in English and Spanish, and then we'll also have these campus walks to see what the schools actually look like for our families this coming fall. So with that, I'm going to take you all through a school finder tool here and an application walk. I'm going to toggle through my screen real quick. So if my screen's not there, Chris or Colin, please let me know what that looks like and we can go from here. So first thing I'm going to look here is our school finder. So as we look at our school finder, this is our Aldine site. We can see here what's the best name of our school. We have options on the top. We can click on all schools where we have it broken down by our primary, elementary, middle, 9th grade buildings and high schools. Can you all see this?
Adrian, we're still seeing the slide.
All right, let me stop real quick and I'm going to reshare here.
We do have a couple of questions in the chat. I just wanted to bring your attention there. Feel free to wait until the end for questions.
Okay.
But there are a couple.
Great. Let me go through this real quick. You guys should see the school finder now, correct?
Yep, we got it.
All right, great. So as I mentioned, here's our school finder. You have it broken down by primary, elementary, middle, 9th grade, and high schools. For this demonstration, I'm just going to click the high schools. This is going to give us all our high schools in Aldine. We can come down here. We see each school in our district. So if I'm a parent, I can come and look and say, okay, where am I looking at? What are my choices? What are my options in the district? Blanson CTE High School, our Avalos P-Tech School, La Promesa, our newcomer and dual language experience, our Victory Early College. We have our Eisenhower IB program. I mentioned on the top, you see the select language. We have French, Spanish, and Vietnamese. So whatever the language our parents, these are our most common spoken languages in our district. So this is why we have these 4 on here. So if I click on it, I can click on Blanson CTE. I can come down, I can have an overview. I can learn more about the school, all the programs that they have, so they can click on here. We're working to make these links hyperlink to go into greater detail of the school. And then, some of the other programs, some of the school information, what grade it serves, the class time, principal. So we're working to pump this up and enhance it for our families and other programs and services that they have at this school. So if I'm a parent, I can compare and contrast all my schools here and cleanly see it. So that's just a quick one view of the high school strand. You can do that for each one. I'm going to come back here and I'm just going to show you our application, and we're going to take some questions next. So our choice application, as I mentioned, is a really interesting piece to it. A lot of our families, again, did it by phone. So that was pretty neat as well. Here's my account. Parents can create it. They come in. I made an account for myself. I come in. I can easily see my lottery applications if it's been run, the district vision and mission on here. And as we go through it, it's like a drop down, my name, title, address, choice of it. We've had about 5,000 or over 6,000 applications. Of course, when the internet is going to not work, it's going to be this time now. But clearly, if you guys go on the top and highlight enroll.aldineisd.org, you can come in here, you can see the work on here. So we can see what those applications look like. More importantly, it's just a drop down, name, date, required fields on there. So I'm going to stop right there. It's not loading. We won't worry about that. If you want more information on it, I can walk you through that in detail on here. So I'm going to go ahead and hit the chat here, Chris, if you guys have any questions for us.
Yeah, great. And I'm happy to facilitate a few questions here. The first, so I'll kind of go from the bottom here. Michelle in Midland asked, why did y'all end up going with SchoolMint as your provider? There are a few vendors out there in the field.
Yeah, a great question. There are several providers out there that do this work. There's Acumen who does this work as well as SchoolMint. Those are probably the two most common ones we're familiar with. Since this conversation started a year in advance with the school magnet program, and they had vetted some of the programs out there already. I've been very fortunate to be part of the system grade schools for several years. So I was familiar with a lot of them already. And so just with the knowledge I've learned from our support from our EA providers, the research they've done, we're like, this is the best fit for us at this time for Aldine. So we were ready to move forward with it because we wanted to get it out this year and not wait a whole another year on that process. But the great thing about it, every checklist of any item we've asked for, they've been able to deliver on it. And that process was seamless. And so we haven't had, less than 1% of issues, I would say, with the tool that we've been asking for.
Yeah. Colin, I'm curious from your perspective, because I know as EA, you're also supporting Midland that used a different vendor. We can have a frank conversation here. What are some of the, if somebody is looking to get into this work and is looking, doesn't know, what they need, could you offer any questions they should be asking?
Yeah, I mean, I think that the team on the project, whether it's Acumen or SchoolMint, we've worked with both. I love both. Worked with Acumen in Newark and in Midland, in SchoolMint in Camden, and in Aldine. And in both cases, I think looking at the team and getting someone who's experienced specifically with these types of systems. SchoolMint does a lot of application management, which they're very good at. I think that their interface and their sort of parent connection is super clean and really good. They do a lot of that stuff with charter schools, but I would want to look specifically both at Acumen and SchoolMint about the team having experience working with districts, and it gets a little bit to Javier's point and your point about connecting to existing district data systems, the SIS and the sometimes paper transfer flows that need to be updated. Just understanding how a district needs to refine its processes to actually get the benefit out of these systems, and helping a district work through that, I think is essential. And I think that's determined by the experience of the team, the other districts they work with, and then asking questions about, do you play well with Skyward? Do you play well with Power School? Can you give us an example of a time where you identified a district transfer process that was clunky that you helped refine? Those types of questions. I would emphasize some of those, because I think it is a different and challenging beast to get into some districts, especially ones that haven't refined. Not that anyone here has done that, but haven't refined their transfer processes or some of their registration processes in a while.
Yeah, and good point to that, Colin. We're actually talking about how do we simplify our transfer process using this unified enrollment as well. Is it possible? Do our systems talk to make it one less step for parents to fill out now a transfer document? Where do I go from there? So if these unified enrollment systems can do a one-stop shop for us, that just helps our parents stay in our buildings and stay in that process and make it easier for them.
Yeah, and that's the highest value for these, so you can start with one function like registering in a magnet school, just for example, but start to add on to that feature set, so that eventually you've got sort of a one platform for parents to interact with registering, moving schools, or learning about their schools generally, because that's where you start to really see the impact. And I think it's often worth it just to contract with one of these guys to do one thing, but you really start to see a bang for your buck when you can integrate all those functions. And it's so helpful to your parents. Your superintendent will love it, because they can start to talk about, they can give a quick and easy answer to a parent who's like, well, I want to change schools. What do I do? Or, and it can really help eliminate some of the, for lack of a better word, touchy transfer questions that come from folks who know someone who knows someone, or those types of processes that can be, at the worst, inequitable, and even at the best sort of a headache for district staff who have to deal with one-off cases. Or my cousin wants to move here, and if you have a process to send them to, it's a time saver, it's more fair, and it is far more transparent.
Yeah, I think that's one of the beauties of a system like this, is how transparent and objective it can be in a world where traditional enrollment systems can be anything but. They can be not very transparent and not super equitable. So it sounds like, we've got a few questions about the technical side of that. It sounds like you're able to work with the vendor to connect your school information system with the enrollment, and then were they able to kind of engineer some solutions around correcting duplicates, like Javier was saying, or solving for the language of these different systems? Or is that something that you had to construct either with a third party or separately?
Yeah, excellent question. That's where we're at this point in the process, talking to our two systems. What can we do to streamline that process? So, one thing, the SSI folders or file, is it compatible with our systems? So we're going through that right now with Schoolment and their process, so they can build it out. What we've been told is, anything is possible if they have enough time and runway to build it with their developers on that side of the house. So we've been pretty optimistic with it. So as I mentioned, everything Schoolment has promised, they have delivered on that piece. So right now we're working with our student services department to ensure that the items, information they need from the application, it can roll over into our system. So as when they do their next school, it can automatically roll over. One question about the duplicates that we saw down there, that was took a very, very long time for one person to go through and cross-check it this year, because we didn't have that piece built in. So if we're able to get that student ID number in the system and it auto-populates, we don't anticipate any duplicates unless it's a new school, a new student enrolling into Aldine. But in that case, we can give that red carpet service to ensure that they get their application complete, rather than spending hours on hours to complete duplicates and remove one or the other, because we would just verify that information in our system. So it takes less people to do the work as well.
Another question that came up in an earlier session about supporting families in going through choice processes with Gabby and Brian and some folks with Families Empowered. Was this something that surfaced there? Was this notion of kind of targeting your outreach to folks? You can have cast a wide net with your school choice processes, but that's to give everyone the same level of attention can be super time consuming, but you might not also get the bang for your buck if you're trying to really target folks who are less likely to participate in choice, but could get the most benefit from choicing into a high quality school. How are you guys thinking about tiering your outreach or targeting certain communities, for example, transition grades or students who are zoned for lower performing schools? How are you targeting your outreach for this application?
Yeah, good question. So actually for 2 of our new schools, we actually did this additional like bonus points or tickets into the lottery. One with our Young Women's Leadership Academy for our 5th grade students that were zoned to one of our middle schools, Teague Middle Schools. They had bonus points in that process as long as they met that criteria because they were one of the schools to help us open it due to their accountability system for the school action fund. So we gave priority enrollment to students zoned to Teague Middle School who would apply for the Young Women's Leadership Academy. So those students who were in 5th grade going to 6th grade or 6th grade going to 7th at the Teague Middle School, they got an extra bonus in the lottery. So when it ran, they had 2 seats rather than 1 opportunity to get pulled on that side of it. Same for our newcomer experience, La Promesa, students that were zoned, newcomer students that are zoned to Lewis Middle School had bonus points as well, very similar to the Teague, because that was our grantee award to create these new school options. So we were able to give those students zoned for their priority enrollment at these new school options. So as we move forward in that discussion, that's a district conversation we need to have with our core leadership team to say like, okay, these are our new programs. These are programs that have high interest, but we're only seeing we need to get more of our students across the district or lower performing who need more need at that campus to join. How do we determine the number of bonus tickets or bonus seats that they get in that lottery process? So this was our pilot year with those 2 new schools. Now we can take that discussion and have it over the next few months. So when we run the lottery in December, we can tell the community, these are the bonus points. This is who gets what. It's clear, communicated to everyone. It's not a surprise, and that families know our process. Great question.
Yeah, and I think the second point on that too is, there's the policies that you put in place to prioritize enrollment for higher need students. So for example, in the students in the attendance areas of areas that are schools that we're targeting, transition grades is a big one. Socioeconomic status is another one that we've used in other districts and that we're discussing at Aldine. And all of those priorities can be created in the system. And but then in order for families to utilize the priorities, they have to actually sign up. And so there's the second order of, okay, we define these policies, we define these priorities. Now we need to identify who our sort of highest need students are. And if someone has a better way to do this, let us know. But at a certain point in Camden, for example, we literally just went door to door with a piece of paper and had a paper app that we filled out with folks right then and there and took it back and submitted it. And we did some kind of targeting with email, phone, and backpack letter outreach, and then would go out to higher need students from there. And then actually from the keeping sort of a tracking list of families that we never made contact with was sort of one of the criteria for, okay, now we need to go to your door and like get an application that way. And so, there's 2 components to it, as Adrian mentioned. There's the priorities that exist to provide equitable access to these high quality seats. And then there's actually, getting the families to take advantage of those priorities, which are, run hand in hand. You need to have both, and is a significant component is working to do this outreach.
Yeah, and one thing too, as we talk about targeted enrollment, we did use specific cards out to grade levels, 5th and 8th grade for those transition grades for those programs. as well. One of our schools, Upper Mesa, we house strategic events and the evenings, Saturdays, and during the days at different locations where families can come to us. So rather than come to our building, we'll go to the community and say, come out here, this is where we're at. One thing we did run into, and I'm surprised some of the big box stores wouldn't allow us to stand in front of their buildings to pass out flyers or put a table up. It may just because of the COVID restrictions right now, but it's something that we'll continue to do and find places that allow us to go out to the community so we can go to our families rather than they just come to us.
Yeah. Love that. We're right at time. Just want to, maybe there's a quick answer to Kristen's question about generating reports. I imagine that you can do that in the district using the system.
Super simple. Yeah. Absolutely. We can run those through Schoolman, number of students, application, places, all of that, very easy to do.
Yeah, and then Brian, your shout out to San Antonio is spot on. They're doing a lot of really interesting work on diverse by design schools and using these geocoded census blocks to assign preferences to choice schools. So thanks everyone for being here. Thanks Adrian and Colin for sharing today. We've just got one session left of our first day of Summit, which is an open frame lounge. So if you've got some time and want to share some insights, some ahas, some questions with the group in an informal setting, we'll see you over there. If not, I hope to see you in some sessions tomorrow. Thanks everybody for spending time with us today.
Thank you all.